consistent content over time, targeted to your target audience, solving a pain point of theirs, that you're showing up regularly over time in social, in email, in talking with clients and delivering and solving problems. Like all of those pieces are, I just love, personally, I love the way that they come together into this giant ecosystem.
Welcome, Model FA's David DeSalle here, CEO of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. And I am very excited to bring you our guest today, Kristin Harad. And Kristin and I actually met through a common client of ours, Alan Harris, over at Berkshire Money Management. So shout out to Alan. But we've been working together. We've been supporting each other. And finally, we were like, what? Why aren't we doing a podcast? So, Kristin is the founder of Full Advisor Coaching. She is a business and marketing coach for RIA leaders, really focused on shaping version 2.0 of their firm. And I think all too often, we come across like super legit firms that have their website from 8 years ago. They have their marketing strategy from 8 years ago, and they've been so busy growing that they haven't really had an opportunity to hit the pause button and refresh all the things that they're currently focused on. And the reality is the things that got them to where they are now aren't necessarily the things that will get them to the next level. Kristin is also a mother of two teenagers and a Jack Russell fitness enthusiast. We were just talking about Stanley Cups and whatnot. And she's also a former RIA founder herself. But Kristin, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, David. It's great to be here. And it is about time. I know we've talked so many times. We were always like, we should just hit the record button. So now we finally are, which is great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for that intro. I appreciate it.
Of course. And I do want to, before we dive in, just get a sense of your background for our listeners to help set the stage. So, in your bio, former RIA founder, you're now the founder of Full Advisor Coaching, focused on business and marketing coaching. So kind of bring us through that journey.
Oh, sure. I'll try to do the accelerated version, as it's been a number of decades now. But I spent the first 14 or 15 years of my career working for really large firms in the primarily in the financial, personal finance space. So I started at Chase Manhattan, now JP Morgan Chase, out of college over in New York. Then I worked for Gray Direct Marketing on the Chase account. I moved west to San Francisco and worked at Charles Schwab. Before that, I worked for an internet loyalty marketing company that was purchased by United. So I got to work on the United loyalty brand, which was very cool. I worked for Charles Schwab in their in-house ad agency. I went and worked I was also working in an agency out here that Visa was our client. So I had a lot of big names in the personal finance space, but I was feeling this sort of emptiness of not having any individual or personal impact on people's lives. Because it was great from a strategy standpoint and learning all the cool marketing things that you'd want to learn from how to build awareness all the way through to how to sustain loyal customers. But it lacked the personal connection that I craved, right? So I left. I was going to be a life coach. And so I actually took a marketing job at a life coaching school here in Marin. And so I did that and did that for about 6 months while I went through their training. And I realized, well, all right, I'm going to need something. It's hard to sell life coaching straight up, especially, 15 years ago. And so I had been working with a CFP for my own personal financial plan. My husband and I were working with one, and I was like, oh, I like this. What is this? So long story short, I decided I was going to be a financial planner. I did the coursework. In the midst of that, I quit my job and opened an REA, having no idea what I was doing. But I was like, I know I'm done. I'd had a child. I knew I didn't want to mess around working for someone else anymore. So I hung the my shingle and said, I'll just figure it out. And I ran an REA for 8 years, doing planning for uh, new and expectant parents and families with young children. And it was strictly planning, subscription. I called it retainer base, but it would be a subscription model now. And it was really around leveraging all of my relationship marketing experience and how do you keep people engaged and renewing and continuing to find value over time. And um, after a while, I had advisors calling me saying, how did you get into this? What are you doing? How come you're growing so quickly? What's happening? Why are you working with a niche? And I put together just a brief course on how to pick a niche. And I was like, oh, okay, this seemed pretty obvious to me. Like square one, having come out of my background, I was like, well, what do you mean? I don't know how you know how to do marketing if you don't know who you're trying to attract in. And so anyway, over time, I was getting more and more interest from advisors looking for advice. And I had other planners working with me, and I was starting to realize that it was hard to do both. Run an RA and try to do marketing, consulting, and coaching. And I was starting to see like my true passion was more in helping the advisor build the practice that they wanted and create the lifestyle they wanted. Because I for so long wanted to start my own business that the my ability then to be able to impact advisors who wanted their own RAs or who had one and didn't, were lost and couldn't figure out where to go. Um, it it really did fuel my fire to be like, okay, I know that while I enjoyed helping clients with their financial plans, I also knew that wasn't necessarily my best uh, skill. I was great at the relationships and helping people, move through and make decisions, but I wasn't as energized by the actual technical elements. And so I pivoted to my advisor who was working with me took a lot of those clients. I pivoted out of that into full-time coaching and consulting, probably about 10 years ago, almost exactly.
Interesting. We have similar ish backgrounds because I was an advisor myself, and I got finger quotes up now when I say advisor. I was at Northwestern, so for the 7 years I was there, for the first four,
Wow.
maybe 5 years, I was slinging insurance, the Project 200,
Yeah.
friends and family. I was an impressionable, 21-year-old person when I started there, and there's a lot of really great things that I got from Northwestern, and there was a lot of things where I'm like, oh, I think it could be done differently and less salesy. But I attest a lot of what I'm doing now to the tenacity and persistence that I learned there. But also, I ran a team of advisors, helping them get their business off the ground. And similar to you, I just found I was more passionate about helping the advisor than I was helping the end client. And the way I kind of justified it in my head was I could bring over 50, 60 clients a year like I had historically, or I could teach 10 advisors how to do that same thing and
Yeah.
multiply the impact. And then
Yeah.
finally
That's what
took the leap of faith, and got into consulting for the last 7 years. So similar journeys. And I find that there's a lot of like former practitioners that have now created ancillary companies and services to support advisors on or with the thing that they were particularly and uniquely gifted at in building their financial planning business. So it's cool to see that there's people and companies supporting advisors who were also in the trenches at some point too.
Right. I think that's really interesting. And I don't think it's an absolute must, but I think it does add just a level of insight and awareness of what it's like. And you can get various experience depending on, where you came from, but I find it's pretty exciting to like when you see all of the I'm also very passionate about helping all of the other service providers in our industry connect with the right advisors. It's
Hmm.
really like to me one of the most fun things to be like, oh, I think for your situation you need to do X, Y, and Z, and I know the perfect expert to help you in that. And I find that to be one of the most fulfilling things is doing that connecting across because there are so many talented service providers who understand our specific industry. Because if, as you know, David, as well as I, if you've ever worked with someone, a service provider who doesn't understand our industry, and they try to apply the strategies, tools, techniques that they might use for a retailer or a more transactional business, you you quickly see the difference, right, in money spent, return on investment, and how that does not equate for people
A
for
hundred
advisors.
percent. And it also adds, to a degree, a layer of additional credibility when they realize, okay, you've done this before as well. You're just focused on, your particular unique ability. And to your point, I found, and you've probably found this too, is I get a lot of energy and a lot of psychological income when I connect people that is maybe a better fit for their particular needs than what we're able to help with. But inevitably, whether it's directly or indirectly, by doing that, you get actual income in a roundabout way eventually, because you're putting so much good out in the world and connecting folks. It's cool to see how everything kind of comes full
I love
circle,
that.
and as long
Mhm.
as you have an abundant mindset, um, and you're not like fear based of like, no, I need to work with this person myself and figure it out, all your dreams and wishes, end up coming true over time, just in the act of helping other people's dreams and wishes, come true too. So it's cool to see that like actually work in real life. And I'm sure you've experienced that too.
It's my favorite thing, honestly. I mean, I think that is, eh, yeah, just kind of the fundamental of the abundance mindset of just being like, and I think a lot of the advisors that you and I both help in our various ways have this mindset too of being like, I'm just going to give you the absolute, I mean, and they are legally bound to give you the absolute best advice, but also just the having the best interest of the client and not being that as like the legal obligation, but truly having the best interest of that client in mind and knowing that sometimes that means that they don't work with someone who calls in, and that they do refer that business out and that they do say, I'm not the best provider for you, but I know someone who may be. And I think that when advisors can embrace that as well and get really clear on who they do serve really well and then who is not a good fit and who, and they form those partnerships or relationships with others, they too can experience that, that wheel of abundance and ultimate income or acceleration of growth, right?
For sure. And I to kick off our marketing conversation, I mentioned in the opening, we were talking about Stanley Cups, and for
Hmm.
those tuning in, you may be like, what about Stanley Cups? But there was a scenario where I think you said it's the Simple Human brand, and you had talked about how it made you smile and it was a delightful experience. And I know with marketing, it's not just attracting folks, but it's also trying to elevate the client experience in such a way
Hmm.
to where they can't help but talk about you. Um, and if you could just kind of share that story. So you were chatting with the gentleman, you're kind of busting his chops about his cup, and then something happened that put a big
Yeah.
smile on your face. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so I was doing a Zoom call, and we were having a conversation, and actually a client of mine. So it was kind of extra delightful because he went out of his way to do something for me, and I'm his service provider. But it was absolutely delightful. We were having a conversation. I was kind of giving him a hard time about following the trends and drinking out of his faux Stanley Cup, which was just a different brand. And he was giving me all of the reasons why it was better. And like we kind of had this banter for a few calls, and then out of the blue, um, I got a, package from Amazon or wherever it was, and I was like, "Oh, that's funny. I didn't order anything." And I opened it up, and he had sent me the cup that he uses and said, "Hey, this now you can be the cool kid at the gym," and I was like cracking up, as he is younger than I, and was just shipping that. And it was just so thoughtful. Like I thought to myself, this is the kind of gesture or relation, like that when it just comes so naturally, like you didn't think it out, it wasn't strategic. It wasn't like, well, let me figure out why I would want to do this. It was just innately thoughtful, and really said, I appreciate you in a way that it wasn't on the nose, right? It was just like, hey, we have a nice relationship. This is something I want to do. And it just really hit me in a way that made me go, this is who I want to be." And it's fundamentally took me, David, all the way back to like the reason I ever got into direct marketing was I had read about the Harley Davidson culture, from way back when, like, and how they would have these meetups and people would come together and they would talk about it. And it was really about surprise and delight and creating loyalty and community and how you could do that. And it just reminds me of those connections that you build that transcend a marketing strategy, right?
Yeah, it's I got another quick story that's actually relevant to Alan Harris, who we brought
Oh,
up
good.
before. So he has an advisor on his team, Scott Little, that you probably remember.
Oh, yep.
And when I got engaged to my now wife a little while back, um, Scott he had asked me over email, like, "Hey, what's your address? I have something I want to send you." And you can actually see it behind me right here. He took the photo of when we got engaged, put it on a canvas, and shipped it to me. And I was like, "Whoa, like, thanks, man.
Wow.
Like, that
I've
is so
seen that in
cool."
your
Yeah. So
background,
that's from
and
Scott Little.
yeah, I thought that you just were like, I was like, "Oh, that was a cool picture because it's got you and the helicopter and the fancy engagement, like the down on one knee type of thing." And I was just like, "Oh, yeah, that's nice that he framed it,
Yeah,
that
that's
he
from
did."
Scott.
Oh, that is amazing. So,
So the whole surprise and delight thing, and I feel like we can go back and forth with examples
oh
that
my
we've been
goodness,
on the
for
receiving
sure.
end of or we've done for other folks, but I'd like to get an understanding. Um, so when you come across advisors that you're working with or are considering working with you, what are
Mhm.
the typical sort of problems that they have or the opportunities that they're trying to maximize? And then, of course, we'll get into how you're
Yep.
helping them solve
Sure,
or
sure.
maximize those opportunities. But what are like the top ones that you hear time and time again?
Well, yeah, the first thing, the well, I'll look at this a couple different ways, but the first thing is that they need clarity, right? They just have there's so many options, so many opportunities, so many things they think they should be doing, and they need clarity. And let me back up and just say who I work with, because it has shifted over time. And so the advisor that I have focused this full advisor coaching is a new brand. I was marketing under my name, and I have um, been working overtime to ship to this. And what I'm really finding energy behind and seeing consistency over, the number of fractional CMO clients I've had for uh, the last, I don't know how many years, number of years, is this. The leader of a firm that's shaping version 2.0, right? They've reached a certain point, and that means they either started from scratch and they've reached a level where now they need to step more into CEO and less into advising, like day-to-day delivery of service, and they need to really own and step into that CEO role slash want to do that, right? They want to do that, and they want to grow. They've spun off from a wirehouse or a corporate RIA to be truly independent. So that's not like they're established, but they've now taken on a new independent. Or and this one I've seen amazingly consistently over time is they're the next generation coming in off of the founder who founded maybe 30 years ago,
Mm.
and who may still be there, in some cases not there or should be there, but they're taking over, and the way that the business was built is not the way that it will work today, not only from the personality of the second generation, but also the way that consumers receive and engage and get information and build relationships. So that's very different than it was 30, 40 years ago, right? So now we have this group coming in. So with those things in place, the question is like, how are we going to build a growth engine that fuels a sustainable company over time? Because they're looking to grow or scale depending on how big their vision is. Um, so how do we build that growth engine? And then how do we get that business development? And I mean that term to be marketing, sales, client experience, the whole thing. How do we get that mindset into the organization so that it's not the burden of one or two people, but how is it that through the experience we deliver, we're able to capitalize on, like we just talked about, those points of differentiation to optimize client experience and really build business without it being like just we're doing this campaign, this campaign, this campaign, but innately in the culture of the organization. So
I come
I was,
across so on one of the things that stands out that you just shared was, the second generation ownership. And
mhm,
what I've seen is it's an awesome opportunity if executed appropriately to really take the business to the next level. Typically, things like the website is outdated. They've done
right,
no real marketing, or maybe there was like a radio show way back when that drove a lot of
right,
traffic, and it's just like different now. And that owner, the previous owner, I would consider more often than not, they had a rainmaker style personality
yes, exactly,
where like business development just came so natural to them. But what they didn't do a good job at in most cases is documenting the things that they did that came natural to them and relaying that or coaching the next generation of advisors. So then the new advisors, come in, and they're at a loss for like they have a great existing revenue stream, don't get me wrong,
sure,
but to get to the next level, they're like, Steve was doing all the business development. So coming in and like refreshing the website and refreshing the marketing, and refreshing the communication, the content, the value add, the asking for referrals, right? Sometimes it's
right.
just like, well, you have not because you asked not. So sometimes it's easy as just
I know,
making people aware that you're open for business, so to speak. But I've noticed that
right.
being the main disconnect in second generation RIAs, which is the guy or the gal who was there previously was the main rainmaker, but didn't do a good job training that those skill sets into that next generation before they took off.
Yeah, that's 100% what I've seen. And not to say they didn't do a good job, or and they might even still be there, but it's really and I like to, but like I'm always like it's also you have to remember the client themselves. What worked then doesn't necessarily work now. Like the fundamentals of saying, "Hey, we're open for business. We'd love to have people that benefit from working with us too." There's a fundamental line of like, yes, you have to let people know that, but there's also like you said, like the amount of information that's available to consumers. It's like, how are you helping them get the information they need? How are you prompting action? And the rainmaker, they would be networking like crazy, right? They'd pick up the phone, do the cold call, do the things, that you show up in, in the at the place of business and work the room, as it were. And some of that doesn't fly now. Some of that people are afraid to do, and they don't realize they could do things like that.
Hmm.
And there's just so many more tools out there that that this generation can use. But I think you've really hit on something there to say, like, fundamentally, those scripts or dialogues that that founder used or had, or the, the methods, how is it that we can capture that and pass it down so we do get all of the good things there, and then how does that next generation go, all right, that got us here, these things still work, but now we need to look at it in a new way, right? Or we need to incorporate it in a new way.
What do
It
you Oh, sorry, I didn't mean
No, go
to
ahead, go
interject
ahead.
there.
Mm,
A common question that I get from folks who don't really do any marketing, right,
yeah,
is how much do I spend on marketing?
yeah,
And I'm sure it depends on, like, are you managing 100 million or $1 billion? But is there like a rule of thumb in terms of percentage of revenue? Like, how do you think through an
ugh,
actual marketing budget? I know it's not a straightforward answer, but I'm curious to know kind of loosely what you share with
yeah.
folks.
So that question often comes up, and I can throw out a percentage and be like, well, if you're not spending at least 5% of revenue, then what are you doing? Or if if you really want to make a leap, you need 10%. And there's been various studies, and some people go, well, I have a client who's like, we spend 3% on marketing, and if we really need to, we'll move to 4. And you know what the issue with that question is, like, what are you counting in that number? That's
Mm,
what I'm hearing. It's like, when I say, okay, they're like, we need a return on investment. Like, well, let's break it down. What do you consider marketing in your 3%, right? Or your 5% or your 10%? Because it really should be a much higher number than what people are putting, the percentage. But ultimately, it's like breaking down, going, okay, we're going to be talking about people's time, their energy, their mental capacity, plus outlaying dollars for professional help if you don't have the skill on your team, plus media costs, buys, development, whatever it might be. And so it it's breaking it. I know advisors just want a number, like, tell me what percent I have to spend.
it
And we can do that.
depends.
But I hate saying that, but it's true. It's really about looking and saying, all right, we're, looking at the whole effort, and then saying, what are we counting as marketing, and what are we counting as kind of that overarching business development, right? Because you know as well as I know, David, that it's not just about, oh, I ran some ads so people picked up the phone and they called in, or, oh, we have a blog and we should post it on LinkedIn and people call it. It is the culmination of those elements, those touch points over time, that could come from any point of the experience that would then fuel development. So um I know everyone's like, "Oh, you're skirting the question." I'm like, "Look, I can sit down and break down the budget for you and go, okay, for every, if you want to go straight dollars, we'll look and go, all right, for every dollar I spend, I need to know how many new leads is that bringing in, and are those leads, how fast do those leads convert to prospects, convert to clients? What is the value of those clients, and do they stay over time?" And we can break all those things down and say, this effort resulted in this number of leads. But if we don't look at, like, the quality of those leads, then you could spend a ton, get a bunch of leads that are all a waste of your team's time to be on the phone with. So we have to kind of look under the magnifying glass on those, use that to say, what is the path, and should we best spend our money?
Yeah, I think so I'm gonna share something that um may frustrate advisors even more, but I think it to be true. So, like, if you're running, say, workshops or seminars, it's easy to say,
Yeah,
okay, I spent, $5,000 and I got $1 million client. So that ROI was
that
2 to
paid for
1,
itself.
right? But
Yeah.
in my opinion, when you're marketing the right way, right, you have a lead magnet or two on your website and an
Mhm.
email campaign that they go through, you have videos or a podcast and ongoing social media content, you have client events, you have a nice website, like, you have all the things that you're supposed to do. And let's say someone becomes a client. Well, and let's say you have client reviews as well, right? So let's say someone
Mhm.
becomes a client and maybe they were put on your radar from one of your clients, right? And then they hopped on the
Right.
website, maybe they download the lead magnet, they saw your reviews, maybe they connected on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or something, and then they finally worked up enough courage, to schedule a meeting with you. It's like, which one of those gets the credit? I think the credit goes to
Yeah.
your marketing machine. So I think the best marketing is where you can't really track the ROI on a specific piece of your marketing plan, but you can say, okay, we spent 50 grand, we spent 100 grand on
Right.
marketing in general, and we got, 4x that back. Keep doing all those different pieces because
Right.
you're bringing people through a journey, you're becoming omnipresent, you're staying relevant, and eventually they break down and get on your calendar and become a client. So I think
Right.
if it's difficult to track the ROI from the specific puzzle piece of your marketing plan, you're in a really good spot. Again, a little off color
Right.
with that thought, but
No, I
that's
mean
what I
that
think.
and that's how I look at my own marketing too. It's not like I don't ask, "Oh, David, how'd you hear about me?" But then the answer usually is, "Well, I think I first heard you on the Kids' podcast about 3 years ago or whatever." And then, yeah, did I read an article from you? Like, I love when it's just like, I don't like they know, but they don't know. They throw out a
Yep.
few different things. And then I saw on the message board for XYPN that you were here. And I was like, great. That's what I want. I want to know that I don't need to know specifically. I mean, I will do a measure off of, oh, I spoke at an event and I had X number of people sign up immediately from that. So I do kind
Hmm.
of gauge, get a temperature reading of like, all right, that seemed to have a positive, like net positive. But then I, overall go, all right, did I put a lot of time and energy into that? Was there a lot of out of pocket? What happened there? And so you can get reads on like where the outliers were like, oh, yeah, that particular thing seemed to have been a waste of time. But as a whole, that there's the cadence or the metronome, I like to say, of like consistent content over time, targeted to your target audience, solving a pain point of theirs, that you're showing up regularly over time in social, in email, in talking with clients and delivering and solving problems. Like all of those pieces are I just love personally, I love the way that they come together into this giant ecosystem of
Hmm.
possibility. And then I remember I used to get really energized because I was like, I have no idea when this particular effort will pay off for me exactly, but I know it will. And so then it's exciting for me to put out content, to get momentum, to share on social media regularly, be like, because any single thing could trigger someone, but I never know what it is. And it's very exciting to me to have the tapestry of all of it together, right?
Well, it's interesting. I was just talking with my wife Kennedy about this the other day, but when we uh, when we first launched the podcast, the Model FA podcast,
Hmm.
like the main purpose was to deliver value to the advisor community and, get in front of some cool people and, interview them and start to build relationships. And it wasn't until probably, I don't know, a year ago where I saw a little bit of consistency as it relates to there was someone popping on my calendar, a couple, two, three times a month from the podcast. And then it became, um, the last 6 months has been like 2 calls a week from the
Yeah.
podcast. And then there's relationships like ours that have developed into actually sending each other referrals. And I told her, I was like, part of your success in business, whatever business you have, is just lasting long enough and staying in
Yeah.
business long enough to allow all that relational capital, all that good stuff that you're putting out into the marketplace to catch up. And I told her, I was like, there is so much momentum right now that like I couldn't stop it if I wanted to. But
Right.
two years ago, that wasn't the case, right? 2 years ago,
Yeah.
it was still being super proactive for business development, and now I don't want to say that I'm resting by any means because I'm not, but more businesses coming to us now than having to go out and get it. Whereas if we gave up
Right.
a couple
Right.
of years ago, we never would have experienced what we're experiencing now. So I think my point of bringing
Yeah.
that up, Kristin, is when advisors pick a particular marketing strategy, whatever it is, I find that they don't give it enough time to actually bear the fruits of their initial labor.
Yes, and it is so hard to, as a as service professionals who are trying to help move advisors along as quickly as possible, you can't say it often enough, like, "It's gonna take time. It's gonna take time. It needs to build over time." Think of it like a snowball, like it needs to build and accelerate, and we need momentum. And so, it's the advisors who can say, I'm gonna commit to this, and I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna believe, and I am going to follow a strategy and follow through on it and commit over time, that I see it paying off for, because it, like you said, it picks up speed and it gets exciting,
Mm-hmm.
and then the phone's ringing, and it's not just like you're not there is the proactive versus reactive. And when you're like, when people go, "Oh, well, we just grow on referral. Our clients refer us," and they're sitting and waiting for the phone to ring. When you get proactive and you're reaching out from any point of that relationship, all the way from like brand new awareness through to asking a client if they can refer you, um, it's it it's just amazing to see the payoff of being proactive. Plus, I mean, when we get down to it, it's like you're creating energy. Like every time you're engaging or sharing or teaching or putting value out there. I mean, I don't know about you. I do know about you, David. You and I both are this way. It's like, I just want to teach you and tell you and explain to you and give you ideas and go back and forth. And I want to connect you with the right people. And I believe in that it will all come together, like, and I get excited about it. It creates energy, and then energy, begets energy, and other people go, wow, I want to be a part of that. Okay. And I think it excites your employees. I think it excites your clients. It excites people who meet you. And it's like, yeah, let's put that out there.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes when people pick a new marketing strategy, they think to themselves, okay, I'm good now. Like
Yeah.
I can stop doing what got me to where I am. And the reality is no, keep doing, because
Yeah.
there's a runway involved to get the
Yeah.
payoff from whatever your new marketing strategy is. So it's no, you got to stay focused and continue to eat the proverbial, what sandwich that you're trying to get
Yeah.
rid of, and give the marketing strategy enough time to actually pay off. Like there's nothing really out there outside of, buying leads from Smart Asset, which is a big financial risk and a pain in the butt chasing them down all the time. But outside of
Right.
something like that, there's very little marketing strategies that you start on day one, you get results on day two. Like they take
Right.
time to fully take form.
Right, absolutely. And then you're layering things on, like, but you still need the foundation, right? Like what's your baseline content creation, whatever it is that you're doing, and then layering on top of that. So, yeah, I think that's important. And I think when you're looking at the people who are the leaders of an REA, and they're looking ahead and they're like, yeah, I have a goal, like, oh, I want to reach 1 billion in assets under management, or I'm trying to reach 10 million in revenue, or whatever the next big goal is for them. Or, I want to be able to run my business and still and work 30 hours while also having a flourishing, sustainable business. Like trying to figure out that there's the how do we create things so it's not hard, right? Like, so that we remove and I think I heard this on a different interview you had done, one of your earlier episodes with John Prendergast from Blue Leaf, I think,
Hmm.
where you were talking, the two of you had this great conversation around automate what you can, take the work out of things that where you can, so that it frees you up to have those deeper connections, to have those touch points that are meaningful, that fuel you, that engage the client, that make everyone feel the benefits of working together. I thought that was a fascinating discussion, and I was like wanted to literally jump into the podcast and participate with you too. It was so interesting in that way.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask a
Uh-oh.
question,
Okay.
and I don't want to be rejected. So everyone's listening, don't reject me.
Uh-oh.
But so what I've enjoyed about this conversation so far, and I do want to pivot and start wrapping up, is we've done a good
Sure.
job. Uh, and I'm a little biased when I say we've done a good job. So for those listening, you guys are the
We're
judges,
awesome. We're
but
so good. No,
but I think
kidding.
we've done a good job of like grazing the surface and kind of giving a 30,000-foot view. But what
Yeah.
I would like to do at some point soon is record a part 2 podcast with you again.
Okay.
And I'd like to get like super tactical. So it's
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
okay, so thanks for not rejecting me. So on that note, we'll coordinate that. But to pivot, so one of the things that we ask all of our guests, for those of you listening in, if this is one of the first episodes you're listening to, is a book that's had an impact on them. And it's one of our ways of distilling a reading list. And I find a lot of folks, regardless of the industry, tend to hang out in their industry quite a bit. So this is our way of kind of expanding your mind, consuming content in ancillary industries or just business in general. Take those ideas and then implement them into your business. So Kristin, you had mentioned The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. Why'd you
Yes.
pick that book? What's a nugget or two that has really resonated with you?
Yeah, well, first of all, when you asked which book, I I was kind of living the concept of paradox of choice, and that I was like, "Oh my God, there's so many." There are so it was a bit of a play on that, in that I was like, "I'm gonna pick this one," because it essentially exemplifies the issue, right? There's so many great choices, that how do I pick? So the paradox of choice, the thing I love about that book, and it's a number of years old now, is it's essentially saying like, people now, our economy, and this was even decades ago, but even worse now, like you go in, you used to be like, I need jeans. I'm going to go buy a pair of jeans. And you go in and there might be like three choices. Oh, do I want this one, or this one? Now you go in, there's 30 kind of jeans, right? And you're just like, I don't know. And the having so many choices and options actually prevents you from taking action or moving forward, right? And so it's kind of a book about simplicity, and how we're in a world where it's hard to operate that way, right? And so what I like about it, how I think it's relevant to our audience, is that a lot of advisors come to me, like I said from the beginning, looking for clarity, right? Like if I only knew where to focus. There's so many choices, so many things I could be doing, yet I don't know which ones to do, because everyone tells me this way's better, do this, do that. And so I think if we can, it's just a fascinating, sociological read on like our economy and how things work and making decisions. But ultimately, what I go back to my clients with is, let's figure out the two, three, or four things, and usually I land on three. What are the three things we're doing? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to just focus, and like you were saying, David, following through on a strategy. It's like, I'm going to give you three things, and everything else you have complete permission to go, great, I'll look at that in a year, or I'll put that on the back burner, or let's put that on a list to look at later. We can keep track of it all, but it's really about getting to simplicity, eliminating choice, because with too much choice, you take no action, you get nothing done. So that's why I picked that book.
So while you were going through that, I think the perfect example of paradox of choice, in addition to what you shared, is as you were talking, I was picturing the Kitsis tech map. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. Oh my
Where
God.
it's like hundreds of
Well,
software
it's
and
so big now. Like you're like, I'm sorry, I can't enlarge it enough
yeah,
to see it. Yes.
exactly. So, but with that
Yeah.
said, Kristin, we're obviously going to have you back for part 2 since you agreed to that. So no take backsies. But with that said, if I'm curious to follow along in your journey or learn more about what you do, where can I go to stay in touch?
You can go to fulladvisorcoaching.com. That's probably the best place to get access to everything that's available and out there. I also have a podcast, Full Advisor Coaching, the podcast. So David, I imagine you will also be joining me on that.
Happy to.
Yes, so we will continue the conversations there and also back here on part 2. But I'm also on LinkedIn, Kristin Harad. I love LinkedIn. I like having conversations there. Happy to connect with you there if you'd like to reach out to me on
Awesome.
that platform.
Well, I know we've started to build a good relationship, but it's good to document one of our interactions, have you on the pod. And for those of you who spent your valuable time tuning in, I hope you feel inspired to take action on your own marketing, your own version 2.0. And we'll be back with a part 2 at some point soon to get more tactical as well. But appreciate your time and attention. If you would be so kind as to just take a minute and click the review button, leave us a review. That would be very much appreciated. But until next time, enjoy your day, and we'll catch you on the next episode.